Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
Hello and welcome to this week's Countryside with Simon Clark and Kiri Kermode. And we have many visitors, Kiri, and guests on Countryside that have come from the country world and also the agricultural world in many cases to have a look at the Isle of Man, many for the first time. And a lot of them come back, but often from the UK and stuff. But these, the ones you were talking to, were quite far away.
They certainly were, all the way from Oklahoma in America. Absolutely fantastic.
Where the wind comes screaming down the plains.
They did say that their land was totally different to ours. They couldn't believe how lush and green it was here on the island and how desert-like their parts are. But they love the visit here. They've got to visit Beth and Steve Martin from Schmale and to see how crops are grown, and then to Orrisdale and Ballasalla to see livestock production, beef and sheep, and they thought it was such a contrast to back home and really loved their visit to the island.
Yeah, looking forward to listening to that. And also listening again to my chat with John Corkish from Port St Mary. Lovely fella, and he's got some great memories of how times were back on his days on the farm, particularly growing up as a lad as well, and particularly in today's programme as he talks about the times when they were involved in the war. Of course, a lot of the farm and fraternity were sort of exempt from wartime because they have to keep the island going. So a fascinating chat that I'll have with John. So here all is.
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
First on this week's programme, we get many visitors from Ireland, from Scotland, Wales, the UK and Europe as well sometimes, Kiri, but these have come a little bit further afield.
That's right, they've come all the way from Oklahoma to visit the Isle of Man and Northern Ireland and Dublin to study more about the British agriculture, basically. They came to Schmale Farm in the north of the island, and then they popped down to our farm at Orrisdale and Ballasalla to discover what pedigree breeding was all about on the island. Jerry, this is your second time to Britain. Has it changed much?
Actually, it has quite a little bit. We've seen some changes, but again, this is the first time we've ever been to the Isle of Man, and so it's very, very interesting.
Obviously, you've come very, very far. You've come from America.
We have long flights, but one of the things that we do with the OALE stands for the Oklahoma Ag Leadership Encounter, and it's basically the top 12 students in the College of Agriculture at Oklahoma State University. It's a year-long program teaching them about advocating for animal agriculture and how to be the future leaders in agriculture. And so it's a full year training, and then we culminate it with a international trip somewhere. This year it's the Isle of Man and Ireland. And
how has the Isle of Man been for you guys? Obviously it must be very different to America.
Actually, where I grew up in California and then moved to Oregon is somewhat more similar as far as climate and that to the Isle of Man. Lots of good forage production. Grass is king, and it works extremely well. So yes, it's very different, but it's also, there are parts of the U.S. that are very similar to what the Isle of Man is.
You've obviously visited a couple of farms while you've been here on the island in the north, and then you came to our farm at Orrisdale and Ballasalla. How does the livestock differ?
It's very interesting. When we talk about U.S. beef cattle production, we're very heavy into EPDs and numbers and utilization of those kinds of things. And in our conversation yesterday, you're less into those kinds of numbers. But on the sheep side of things, we're more into the visual side of things in the U.S., and we don't use numbers like we really need to. And you use more of those EPDs, EBVs, and utilize those. And so it's the type of animal is slightly different, but then the utilization of genetic numbers and those kind of things is also very different depending on where you're at.
I guess that some of these students here will be able to use contacts, and maybe in the future these genetics could be transferred from, say, UK to America.
We hope so. I mean, that's what this is all about, is to learn that there's a global agriculture out there, and that these students, what we try and do is when we come to other countries is we try and see the differences, the diversity in ag production, the diversity in animal production, and see what you're doing different than we are, and maybe some of those things, maybe we can take 2 or 3 things away, maybe we can bring 2 or 3 things to you.
And is there still a great connection between the farmer and the food consumer in America?
That's one of the problems we deal with in the United States more than anywhere, is that most of our consumers in the U.S. are 3 to 5 generations removed from the family farm. So they think their milk comes from a grocery store, and they don't understand about agriculture. And so we deal with that every day, that those consumers don't understand what we do, why we do it, and how it benefits them.
Has it become a problem?
It has become a problem. We have animal rights groups in the United States that are very well funded, and they do ad campaigns talking about things that we don't do. I mean, in every industry, you have a bad actor every once in a while. But 99.999% of the farmers and ranchers in the U.S., the number one thing they do before they go eat breakfast in the morning goes take care of their cattle, to go take care of their sheep. They do those kinds of things, and consumers don't understand that we put our animals before ourselves.
And with having students like these guys here, that will certainly help promote and maybe have the link again between citizen and country person.
That is exactly what we hope. That is exactly what we're trying to do, is teach these guys how to advocate for animal agriculture. And whether you're a 12-year-old or whether you're a 65-year-old, if you've grown up on a farm, you know more, and you can advocate for animal agriculture. You don't have to be a PhD, in animal science to advocate. You know yourself about animal agriculture and what it does, and 99% more than what most consumers do. And so we have to take that to the consumer and let them understand that we do everything we possibly can to take care of our animals, before they become our food, too.
You're heading to, is it Northern Ireland or Ireland?
Ireland. We're going into Dublin, then we're going up to, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, Galloway?
Yeah, Galway, yeah.
Galway, okay.
And you're going to visit more farms there, I
We are.
assume?
Yes, that is exactly, this trip, what we try and do is we try and spend 30 or 40% of our time on the history of the countries, and then 60 or 70% of our time visiting agricultural farms.
Brilliant. Well, I hope you have a great trip. And next year, maybe again, you'll be back?
We might. We've had great hospitality. We've really enjoyed the Isle of Man. It's been a phenomenal visit, and we're going to send a lot of other people over here.
Mike, is this your first visit to the Isle of Man as well?
It actually is the first time I've been here. Been to Ireland before, but not to the Isle of Man. Fantastic few days.
And what did you like the best about being here?
Oh, the weather, the ocean, the green? The people. People are phenomenal. People of the Isle of Man, the people of Oklahoma have a lot in common. Survivor, I love your national motto. Doesn't matter how you throw me, I'm going to stand on my feet.
That's true.
And then there's a lot of that with our heritage in Oklahoma as well. We suffer a lot of adversity as well, and we're always going to survive. We're always going to land on our feet. People are very warm and gracious. I just felt like I was home.
And how did you think of our agriculture compared to yours?
A little bit smaller scale. Of course, the yields are higher than ours, but the acreages are a little smaller. But I'm always fascinated at the way things are done in other parts of the world. We have green grass about maybe 90 days of the year, and the rest of the time it's brown, either because of cold or drought. So to see green is just incredible. Always interested in I think the European producer does a better job producing for a market than we do. We tend to grow a lot of quantity and don't focus so much on quality. And here it seems to be more quality-based and rather than quantity-based.
And what did you think of the beef cattle in comparison to yours? Because you have a lot of good big feedlots and...
Yeah, a little similar, a little heavier muscled over here than ours are, because you got to utilize smaller acreages for more meat. We need cattle that can survive on 20 or 30 or 40 acres. Some of our stocking rates out in western Oklahoma, run from 20 acres per animal unit all the way up to 30 or 40 acres per animal unit. So when we have a big animal trying to survive on that doesn't work very well. So we tend to go for some of the smaller body sized, but then when we get them into the feedlot scenario, that tends to be where we put the muscle on.
Yeah. And what breeds would you use in particular?
A lot of Angus cattle, a lot of Hereford, a lot of English influence. At one time we had a lot of Brahma Cross for heat and pest tolerance, but we see a lot of the English influence still for meat quality.
And is there much embryo transfer and AI used in Oklahoma?
Starting to more AI. AI's been around a long time. We see a lot of embryo transfer in the show stock, the purebred stock, and I think eventually that'll work its way into the commercial herds as well.
Because obviously you have the massive expo in March as well. That will see some of the best show stock.
Oh, best of the best in all breeds: cattle, sheep, swine, all of it. it's one of the largest youth shows in the world, if not the largest.
Ben, you'll be obviously involved with the Oklahoma Youth Expo. It's a monumental show, I hear, in March.
It is a very large show consisting of 15,000 head of animal total.
And do you take part?
I have taken part in the past and also just got done working it a few months ago.
So what kind of animals would go to this show?
They show goats, sheep, cattle, and swine.
And are they very, very different from your commercial beef and sheep?
Yes, we have both breeder shows and commercial shows.
That's a lot to take on. I assume that it's a lot of organisation to take this show to the forefront of agriculture.
Absolutely. It is a full-time job year-round for a very dedicated staff of wonderful people to put the show on every year.
And do you live on a farm yourself?
I do.
And you raise?
Wheat and cotton, primarily.
So what did you think of the landscape here in the Isle of Man compared to back home?
Far greener and way more beautiful.
Oh, you're too kind. How did the trip come about to come to the Isle of Man? Because obviously you're a student at Oklahoma.
Yes, I am a part of a group called the Oklahoma Ag Leadership Encounter. And this trip is kind of our reward for working the Oklahoma Youth Expo.
Wow.
We've been looking forward to it all year and are really glad to be here.
And do you have to do a report on your visit?
I do have to do a report on my visit.
And is there anything in particular you've got to talk about?
Nothing in particular. I'm actually not even totally sure what my report's going to be about.
But will you be back?
Oh, absolutely.
That was Ben Schultz, Mike Schultz, and Jerry Fitch, all from Oklahoma Agricultural Leadership Encounter class.
I noticed in there, Kiri, that not quite the same sort of setup for learning them in stock judging and things, was there?
No, that's right. They have proper classes, proper programmes to teach these children how to judge beef cattle or sheep. They are coached to the absolute maximum to take them into these big expos in America. There are thousands and thousands of livestock attend, and each student has to undertake the judging of these big classes, and it's part of their curriculum. It's what they learn at Agricultural University.
Yeah, and it's funny because you get that work experience people, don't you, that go around to joinery shops or electricians, for instance, and have a little go at maybe wiring a plug under the supervision, of course. But I suppose on farms they just get shown round and don't really get to see how you know that that's a good sheep or beef cattle that's ready, to be sold or whatever.
That's right. Here we pass down from our fathers or our grandfathers, and it's the same in America, but it's giving those children that maybe like agriculture but don't have a farm at home the opportunity to take part and learn judging and learn which is the best beast. And they have fantastic classes of up 30, 40 students a year coming, maybe non-agricultural students, to learn all about it.
And they seem to enjoy our little farms.
Oh, they really did. They thought the Isle of Man was beautiful, so lush and green, and they didn't mind the cold weather either.
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
Well, I went down to Port St Mary and had a good old chat with John Corkish. Obviously, John, with the age that he's at now, has quite a few memories of times when he was a lad and growing up on the farms, particularly in the war years. Back in the farming days down the south of the Isle of Man, of course, it was, I suppose, when you were a young fella, it was pretty hard times with the war breaking out, was it?
Well, yes. Of course, I was only young during the war, but I got memories of the internees to start with, and then the internees had to run up Port Erin and Port St Mary to start with, but they were then all put to Port Erin, and the army took over the Balqueen. The WAFs took over Morelands at the Four Roads, and I think it was the RAF that had became the Carrick Bay Hotel. So it was quite a busy place round about like at that time, and when there was that much dig for victory and trying, and I suppose, as you know, Simon, the farmers in the wartime, all according to the acreage they had to grow a certain amount of wheat. And Comish and Ballakillia, where I spent all my childhood, they ploughed. I was always thought that they ploughed the whole of Port St Mary, but Stanley Clucas tells me his father ploughed part of it, and I think that was about 1943. So it wasn't right at the start of the war, But the Comish family, there was 2 boys and the old man, like, and they had the lion's share. I would say must be somewhere around 80 acres in Portsmouth Mary Golf Course.
What was it, a golf course then?
Oh yes, and it was all ploughed by the Greens. And this houses built on part, there was undercrop, and there was an old Irishman around here, and when he was stucken, when he'd take a couple of sheaves and turn them upside down and stuck the heads down in one another and then fan them out, and he said that was to keep the rain from blackening the grain.
Aye.
So whether there was anything in it or not, I don't know. But I can remember that, and then.
Was that because they needed that land to grow the wheat?
Oh yes, and I know it was ploughed 2 years on the run, but I don't know honestly was it ploughed 3 because of course the war finished in 45, so it could have been ploughed 3 times, but it went back into grass and back as a golf course. But not only did they plough Portsmouth Mary Golf Course, there was the Rowney Golf Course had part of what a farm called Ballineal, and there was 2 fields of Ballineal in the Rowney Golf Course, and they had just taken the stone wall down the width of the fairways, and there'd be about, I would estimate, about 25 acres in those 2 fields. I've heard them say that the Comishes one year they were 120 acres under between wheat and oats, because it was mainly oats, and since the war there's not been a big lot of wheat grown around here.
Right. Well, were they ploughing them with tractors though?
Oh yes, yeah. There was.
You're fairly hilly.
Well, Portsmouth Mary top end goes up a bit. There's 1 or 2 steep banks in it, but since that I've cut them all and baled them all the roughs.
Really?
Yeah, but the Portsmouth Mary Golf Course and the Rowney Golf Course, they had a blue Fords in each, and the one that was on the Rowney, Comishes bought that off because there was no golf course going, like, so and they had 2 ploughs, so there was two Fordsons there on that farm. Ballacurry had a Fordson of their own. Of course, the majority of Fordsons in the wartime came out on steel wheels, spade lugs, but these were all pre-war tractors, so they were, well, one was 1936 and the other was 1938, so they were on rubbers. And they were able to travel on the road, but
but you were only young then, and
oh, yes.
you spent a lot of youth even before, while you were still at school on the farm.
Oh, yes.
What was the sort of mood like? I mean, the farmers, were they exempt from going to the war?
Oh yes. Even I was. When I came 18, I was still exempt, like, and I was working in Morehouse for Wilfie Castain at that time, Henry's father. But the horses, there was still, I think there was still 5 horses in Ballakillier at that time, like, and I suppose I'd be no more than 12-year-old, and I'd be packing loads on the stiff cart, like, the harvest time. But going back to the golf course, I remember them thrashing, but it wasn't stacked on Portsmouth Mary links, it was thrashed out of the stook, and I remember them thrashing, and myself and another young fellow with the job of cleared. There were no chaff blowers on the mills in those days. I'd direct the chaff out onto a chaff sheet and drag it away, and how they went on.
Got the best, cleanest job then?
Oh no, by no means. But it was always a job the nippers got.
Aye.
So, but and burning it, I had to drag it clear of the mill, like, in the straw stack. But burning the chaff, and because there was blackout that time, so I often enough think, how the hell did they go on? Because the thing would smoulder on for long enough, but
didn't spread.
Didn't spread.
No.
So,
Well, I mean, as a young fellow, I suppose, did you sort of appreciate the scale of war then?
No,
people
not
would
really,
be
not
talking
really.
about the First War, but I mean, what was the mood like from the farmers themselves?
Well,
was it worrying time?
Not as far as a young fellow that I can remember. Everybody seemed to be happy and carry on as usual, like. But
I suppose they thought they were doing a big lot for the country, really.
well, yes,
You know?
it certainly was, because between the attorneys and the RAF and army fellows, they all had to be fed, and it was all local produce like. And someone asked me not long ago, how did they go on for milk when after the war, when the visitors started coming again? Well, it made me stop and think. Well, they were keeping all these forces fellows, army and navy and all such. They were all getting milk at one time then, so it went on just the same. But I do know it would be about 46 or 47. They were flying milk in from Ireland.
Really?
Yes. There was a plane just crashed on the top of Slough. Just another couple of feet higher, and he declared it. And that was the milk plane, and it would be this time of the year when there was lots of visitors had arrived in Isle of Man, and the farms couldn't just produce enough milk and it was getting flown in. And that was the first aluminium milk kegs I ever seen.
Was it? Yeah. But then, I mean, was there much in the way of defences around the country, for fields and barbed wire and things?
Well, the first job my father had after he came out of Ballacquini, was putting the barbed wire up for the attorneys, which started on the cliff top of the back of Bradda Head, and down over and finished up out here at Gansey.
And it's not just a couple of yards then.
Oh, but didn't know. And you couldn't go just walk into Port Eden. I don't remember much about barriers into Port St. Mary, but going into Port Eden, you had to show your identity card. And one instance I can remember, I was I was a lumper anyway, because there was Comishes had 2 fields up at the Rowney farmhouse, and they had to go up Port Eden Promenade to get to them. So consequently, they had to go through the barrier. Well, the fields were ploughed and they were worked, and Leslie set off with the horses and the corn drill. And I remember a young fellow wheeling the sacks of seed to the loft door, and Robert lifting it down onto the trailer. And of course, I didn't miss. If there was a chance for a ride on the tractor, I was there, sitting on the mudguard. No health and safety then days. And he said to Susan, we'd be sitting there on the mudguard, and if you'd have slipped, you'd have been right down in front of the wheel. You'd have been run, because the driver wouldn't have had a help in the hell to stop. And anyhow, we got over there, and there was Leslie standing with the horses and the corn drill at the side, and the barrier shut. And Robert said, What's wrong, Leslie? Oh, he said, Stanley won't let me through, because they were special police, and he was just showing us authority, you see. Oh, he won't let me through. He said, I haven't got my identity card. And Robert said, I haven't got mine either. So I said to Stanley, Bryson, don't be so stupid, Stanley. He said, open the gate, he said, and let us get on. He said, without your identity card, you're not going through. He said, told me to get off the tractor. Stanley, he said, if you don't open that gate, I'll open it for you. And he backed the tractor up 30 or 40 yards, stuck it in top gear, and he threw the gates open in the nick of time. The gates would have been smashed. Robert was going through. But it was just, I mean, it's not as if they were strangers. They all knew one another, but he wanted to show us authority, you see.
Bit of Captain Mannering.
Yes.
But I mean, when the war finally finished in 45, I mean, did the mood change, or was it just as difficult?
Well, as a young fellow, it didn't seem to make a great lot of difference to me at all. Life seemed to go on. As I say, I was never home. I was practically brought up with the Comishes in Ballacquini, and I've seen me, I'd be maybe 12 or so, maybe 13. And they used to send half a dozen sacks of oats down to Castledown Mill. Well, in the springtime, if the tractor was busy, a Saturday morning, they'd put their mare in the cart and send me off to Castledown. Just imagine today, well, of course there was no traffic then, but 12-year-old with a horse and cart setting off. But it was just the done thing. You didn't think anything of it, like.
No. I suppose people got told what to do and what not to do, and it was drilled in you.
Oh, yes.
Got a boot up the bum.
And you can rest assured you maybe have to coax the old mare going there, but when she came out onto the main road and headed for home, you didn't have to do no coaxing. She knew where she was going.
But of course, obviously it didn't put you off because you spent the rest of your life involved in it, didn't you?
More or less. So if I was only for this disability that I've got now, I'd still be mucking in the farm. As I just said to you, I was trying to round sheep up there for William this afternoon. But
Yeah, stick is handy enough though.
well, I was scuppered without it.
Yeah, but tough times, but happy times on
Oh
the farm.
yes. I don't regret a day that I spent working. Not in any in the latter years. I was on the highway board, but prior to that, even that I didn't. I'd know nothing against the highway board, but it used to be the look down of your last job was the highway board. It wasn't to me. It was a job, and that was the main thing. But no, as regards the farm, harvest time, the old man was gravedigger by this time up at Rushen, and in the afternoons when the boys would go to milk, he would always come to fork in the field, and I would, before they went to milk, I'd be shifting the tractor from stook to stook, and then when they went to milk, I would take the old mare and the cart, and I would be building the roads and forking in onto the stack and all. And ask a 13-year-old to do that today, you know where you'd be told to go.
Can I do it with my phone? Yeah, but good memories. Hard times, but good.
Oh, yes.
John Corkish from Port St Mary with his memories of the tough old times, but enjoyable times, as he said. They just cracked on during the war years and tried to keep the Isle of Man sufficient in what it needed, and a lot of changes that were going on around them as well.
We don't realise how spoilt we are nowadays, with the food that comes from a grocery store or what local farmers produce. It's always readily available, whereas then it was really, really difficult times.
Yeah, and of course the sad loss of the plane, having to bring milk in from Ireland and places. And John was telling me afterwards that after the war had finished and they sort of got going a bit, and the demand for milk, I suppose, because it was quite a reasonable, cheap thing to produce in them days. There were 17 farms producing milk around the south of the island, down around that area.
Goodness me, and to think there's only 35 in total now.
I know, incredible, isn't it?
Times
but
change.
Good old memories, wasn't it? And still wouldn't have changed a thing, he said. So it's just nice to know that things weren't all doom and gloom, I suppose. I suppose you didn't see it firsthand maybe here, but I suppose you got a lot of chat from people, didn't you, that was what was going on. But it was an important part of
a very
the way
important
it was.
job.
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
Well, there we are, John Corkish with his memories, happy ones, even though it was wartime and tough times, growing up on the farms down Port St Mary area, telling about his old memories, and wouldn't change a thing about it. You probably wouldn't either, would you?
No, not at all, but it's certainly changed. He'll have seen some changes in his lifetime, and now young farmers, we don't know we're born, really, do we? So spoiled.
A lot more mechanical, I suppose. There was a lot more labour, I suppose, then, wasn't there, where, you got a group of you working together. I suppose the work didn't seem as bad, when you're sort of doing things on your own now.
That's right, it's very solitary
yeah.
unless you get extra staff in, but like you say, it's very mechanised and jobs are a lot quicker now, but they were hard graft back then, and such an essential job they had, providing the food for the nation.
Yeah, and the Oklahoma crew there, they were enjoying themselves on the island by the sound of it.
They really did enjoy it, and many of them hadn't even been out of America to Europe or Britain, and for them to get the opportunity, they were the top 12 students in their university, and to come and experience such a travel placement as this, it's been fantastic for them.
There we go. Hope you enjoyed this week's Countryside, and we'll have a week off next week for the Island Games, and we'll be back the week after that with more on your Countryside. From me, Simon Clark.
And me, Kerry Kermode.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com. Love being Shaw. Terms and conditions apply.